Hello, my name is Kevin Howard, and I am the host of the new podcast, Breadcrumbs, a podcast for people who know it's not working. This week, I'm going to focus our conversation on why finding truth is essential. And so, hopefully you have noticed over the first 8 episodes of this podcast that the way we conduct important conversations, often difficult conversations, is that I am encouraging us to tap first into the aspects of our experience that we have shared, that we've gone through together, and the aspects of who we are that we share, that we can relate to. And what is that? The combination of our shared experiences. Most of us have grown up here in the United States. Most of the culture that we've been exposed to has been American, right? And on top of it, we are human. We breathe the same air. We drink the same clean water. We require the same nutrient food and all the other things that allows us to live. These are bases by which we can identify with each other. And so using our shared experiences and using our shared humanity as the starting point for trying to understand why we disagree, why we see things differently, why we vote for different people, is a healthy and a constructive way to authentically say, okay, maybe there's something I don't know about this other person. Maybe there's something they don't know about me. Maybe if we communicate in an open and non-judgmental way, we might learn something from each other that allows us to come together. So this is the manner by which I have been trying to conduct all these conversations on Breadcrumbs, because we are talking about conversations that we have been kicking the can on, we've been yelling past each other about, we simply have vilified each other because we don't agree on, right? And it's creating problems that are getting to the point where we are not going to be able to solve them. So here we go. Why is finding truth essential? To address this subject, I'm going to share a part of my journey in discovering that I wasn't aware of what was true, and then how I found and why I found that truth is essential in order for me to find purpose, which leads to a strong sense of fulfillment. Okay, so let's go on that journey. The point of me sharing my journey with that consideration is because there are shared experiences and shared considerations that you will recognize in your journey. So follow me through my journey and relate it back to your journey. And here's the thing. What I'm asking you to do is trust what resonates. If what I am saying makes sense to you because you have shared similar experiences and you have similar considerations, then this is the basis by which you accept it as true for you, because it resonates, right? For what doesn't resonate, don't throw it away, but set it aside and see if future experiences might help it make sense to you. Because this is what we do with all the things we learn, is that sometimes the first time we read a book, I didn't quite get it. And then 5 years later, it makes huge sense because you experience some different things. Well, it's the same thing here. So let us begin. Why is finding truth essential? So just giving you a brief background of who Kevin Howard is and how I got down to that consideration as to why finding truth is essential. I am a native-born American. I was born here in the United States, but my mother is a naturalized American. She moved here to the United States from Panama when she was 13 years old. And so she had a vivid understanding of what life was in a different country. And I'm not vilifying Panama or any other country that's not America at all. It's just that each country, each culture, each economics provides their own set of opportunities. So her family sent her to the States because they believed that she could find better opportunities in America. Okay. So that's the context in which she came here. And she finished her education here. She got married at age 20, right? She had two sons, me and my brother, 2 years older than me. And she proceeded to raise us. Now, my parents got divorced when I was 5 and my brother was 7. And so from a very young age, our father separated. And to be candid, and we're not making it a part of the story, we never saw him again. So she raised us in the Bronx, New York, by herself, right? But she had such a passion for being here. She understood the privilege compared to her life in Panama of growing up in the United States. And even though she started off on public assistance, she did like every American dreams of doing. She worked her way up. She was a CNA, a little nurse's aide. She became a legal practical nurse, LPN. And then she went to nursing school and became a registered nurse. So this is her professional path that she was able to do here in the States to become successful, to take care of me and my brother, to send us to a Catholic school education, one of the finest Catholic school educations you can get in the city of New York. She provided to us, literally spent more money on my high school than I spent at the University of Houston on college. So, okay, that kind of commitment. Okay. And so she instilled in us a passion for America, a passion for you have a unique opportunity. We have this unique opportunity. Hopefully this resonates with you to do amazing things that many people don't have the opportunity of doing because they don't live here. So it's incumbent on us to seize this opportunity. So with that vision, with that kind of mother who was strong, who made sure that we weren't going to blow the opportunity, I was motivated. And so I graduated early and I joined the United States military because two things. I wanted to serve my country and I wanted money for college. My mother was spending a ton of money sending my brother to Syracuse University, who was 2 years older. So I didn't want to, try to piggyback on that. How many hours in a day can she work? So I wanted to get my own education, and the GI Bill provides that opportunity. So dual purpose, serve my country, give back to the country that gave me everything, and get my college education paid for. Beautiful. And so off I went. And I had an amazing experience in the military, served, with Colin Powell, 5th Corps, NATO, at the height of the Cold War, Gorbachev, Reagan. Reagan was my commander-in-chief, all that. So not to make this episode just about my journey path, this was the foundation of why chasing my American dream really meant something. And to your ears right now, it might sound naive, but that was the context that I grew up in. And so I was all about chasing my American dream, right? How can I serve in a way to build a life in a way to maximize my freedom, maximize my independence? Yes, exercise my self-interest, but in a fair and square way, not being dishonest in any way, and competing hard in order to take care of me and my family. And so I set about doing that. And I got my college education. I went to graduate school. You became a banker and focused in on providing, customizing financial services for other entrepreneurs to achieve their American dream. It don't get better than that as far as I was concerned. And so I built a wonderful life doing this and was successful in achieving what I would consider an idyllic American middle-class dream. By the time I was 40 years old, I had a big, beautiful house. I was married. We had kids. We had nice cars. We had, we went on great vacations. I was saving money for college. What was wrong? Everything was great. And then one morning I woke up. And I said to myself, is this all life is? Yeah, maybe you had that moment, or maybe not. Maybe you're looking at me saying, you must be crazy. But I literally did. I woke up one day in that big house, with all the toys and everything, and it meant nothing to me. I wasn't ungrateful for what I had earned, but there was no meaning in it. When I saw my life ahead, all I saw was winning more business, doing more deals, right? Making more deposits in my account. And it didn't speak to me. Okay, that's nice stuff. That's lovely. But is that all life is? So that taught me something that I had to answer. And that is, if I had built my whole life to get to this moment and then found it, instead of being happy, satisfied, Muhammad Ali standing over, victorious over somebody we just knocked out, instead of feeling that way, I felt empty. How is that? And what that told me immediately is the person that was looking back at me in the mirror, I didn't know who that person was. So, what do you do when you're 42 and you have all this great career and everything set up, teed up, and you find out you don't know the person looking back at you in the mirror? Well, I didn't leave my wife. I didn't quit my job. I didn't jump in the car and drive out to New Mexico like it was a movie. I went back to work the next day. But I started to spend a lot of my personal time trying to figure out who that person looking in that mirror is. And why is that person not happy with achieving everything I had built my life to do? So that question that I was searching for in what I call my crisis moment, I mean, this whole thing about be careful what you ask for. Well, if you get what you asked for, what you worked hard for, and it means nothing to you, it doesn't make you feel successful and happy and fulfilled, yeah, you got to find out. There's something untrue about that scenario. There's something disconnected about that scenario. And that was, clearly this is not what I wanted. So I needed to find out the truth of that person looking at me in the mirror. So, to be candid, I said, okay, we have made every reference book that I've read on philosophy and sociology and psychology and stuff like that. We have made truth extremely complicated. Do you resonate with that? As if it's the greatest mystery on life. So I said, well, okay, let me start really simple. Because I have a feeling that person staring at me in the mirror is a little bit more complicated. So let's start with something simple, something that I can identify the truth about. I can identify the truth about this. Okay, you may not, I'm sure you recognize what this is. It's kind of fuzzy, right? But if you didn't know what this was, so you touch it, you see that it's red, right? What is true about it that we could tell? It's red. It has a certain weight to it. It's about 7-8 ounces, right? It has this little stem thing on it. Okay, so that suggests maybe, I don't know, maybe we actually know that it was attached to something, a tree. Right. But the fact is, okay, so when we try to find out what is true about this thing that we don't know what it is, like me looking at myself in the mirror, we start with the outside. We start what it looks like. It's red. This one happens to be red. Right. It happens to have a stem, or a little piece of wood there. Okay. Right. It has a bottom with that little, okay. So we start with what it looks like. Then we go to say, well, what is it? Is this a rock? Right? No, we know where we're going with this. By getting into what this is, now that we've seen what it looks like, we see how much it weighs, we discover if we take a bite, right, that it's actual edible, right? If you eat it, it gives you a burst of energy. It gives you some energy. it tastes sweet, right? Okay, so by examining, you start with what is it? I mean, you start with what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What is it? You start to get the meaning. And so I came to understand the truth about an apple, right? In the same way we both have come to understand the truth about an apple, right? We started in what is it? We learned what it meant. It's actual food. It's sweet. Okay. It's not enough food to fill us like a meal. So it's a snack. Okay. All right. It makes us feel good and it tastes good. And on top of it, it's healthy. It's not the kind of thing that makes you fat, that gives you diabetes or anything, right? So it's a healthy snack. Okay, so what is the point of this thing? Well, the point of it is to eat, for us to eat, for a goat to eat, for a horse to eat, for any creature to eat, right? That becomes its purpose. Why? Because it's the best use. Yes, I could throw it against the wall, but that's not the best use, right? Okay. So by examining something that's simple, we can apply, well, how do I ascertain truth? Because we've been told a lot of nonsense that makes truth inaccessible. But it's not. Truth is simply the starting point. Truth is what actually happened, right? And then once you get past what actually happened, and you could look at who was involved with what happened, you could start figuring out, what does that mean? And once you understand what something means, okay, this is a healthy snack, then you can ascertain what's the best use of this. And that becomes its purpose. Okay? Right. And if this apple serves its purpose because we're going to eat it, the goat's going to eat it, as opposed to it just rotting and falling on the ground and no one eats it, if it serves its purpose, then this apple brings about fulfillment. To the extent it can appreciate it, that's what it is. Now, the good news is we can appreciate it. So, back to us. I'm looking at myself in this mirror. What is true about me? What is true about you? Well, I am a person of African American descent. I'm brown skin. Can't tell I'm American, but that's what I look like. Right? I'm of a certain age. You can see the salt and pepper in my hair. I will be 60 on November 30th, which will be this coming up Sunday. Okay. I'm of a certain weight. Right? Okay. Now, if I was at a cocktail party, the first thing that people who are meeting me would want to know is, well, what do you do? So, okay, I'm a banker, or have been. I'm a consultant for climate risk and sustainability. I'm a published author. All those things. Further conversation, yes, I was born here in the States, so I'm an American. I happen to be male. I'm a man. And I happen to identify that way. Taking nothing away from anyone who identifies differently. That's fine. So that's where we start. The who I am is, quite frankly, all the uniforms I wear, all the teams I'm on. If I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm a Cowboys fan. If I drive a Chevy and would never drive a Ford, I'm a Chevy man. And don't you give me no stuff, right? Okay, those are things that I identify with. I've been encouraged to identify with. But that's not all I am. But they're true. To go deeper, to get into the meaning, we got to look at what I am. Like that apple. What is it? It's not a rock. And neither am I. Yeah, it's self-evident, but this is where meaning comes from. I'm a human. And how do I function as a human? Well, here I am. And while we're having this conversation, you will notice maybe that I'm breathing. Okay. So as a human, I need air. As a human, I need water, clean water. And for humans who don't have clean water, you see how ill they are and they don't live long. So I need water, clean water. I need nutrient food. I need atmospheric pressure. There is pressure in our bodies. And if it's not balanced from pressure out here, the pressure will expand until it finds equilibrium, which is why if we go into deep space, our bodies will balloon to over twice the size and kill us because there's not enough pressure on the outside in deep space to balance the pressure of our circulatory systems in our body. Okay, so I need all these things. And guess what? And this is a part of what I am. I don't produce any of that. So to understand the meaning of what I am is to recognize that while I do exist, I exist because I receive the essential things I need to live from sources that I do not control. And that tells me a part of being a human is that we exist as a part of something larger than ourselves. If we existed, if our existence was just about what's right here, then we wouldn't need any of this. And this is where I discovered that part of the reason why I woke up in my house and didn't find meaning is because one of the things that gave me meaning that I thought I was seeking was independence. But there's nothing independent about how I was actually living, even though I believed that that was a virtue, that I was working towards that. No, it's impossible for me to live independently. Independence is deep space. So I realized by examining what I am that I live interdependently. I benefit from this, the fact that I'm dependent on sunlight. And I contribute to the environment that sustains me. How? Well, I breathe oxygen. So do you. And I exhale carbon dioxide. The trees breathe carbon dioxide. And with it, they make food. Photosynthesis, sun, food for the critters. And then they exhale oxygen. Well, isn't that great? So they're exhaling what we need to breathe, and we're exhaling what they need to breathe. This is how we contribute to the ecology in which we live, the ecology that supports us. It's a symbiotic give and take that works for both of us. That's why it's not codependency, it's interdependence, where both sides benefit. Okay? Understanding what I am helped me to understand that reality. So now I'm going from the truth to what that truth means. Yes, I'm a human, but that means I live and exist as a part of something bigger than me. And all those other things matter because I can't exist without them. Okay. So what further do I know that helps me to understand who I am, what I am? How can I find purpose, right? Well, let's just take a review of what we actually know about how we came into existence. Now, again, this falls right in the category of shared experience. So the moment that I say something that you didn't experience too, that's when you know he's off his rocker. Right. Okay. But we exist because our parents chose to exert some energy to have sex. Yeah, I said it. It's not a dirty word. They had sex. Okay. And it took energy to do it. So they got to If the houses are rocking, thank you, Stevie Ray Vaughan. If the houses are rocking, don't bother knocking. Yeah. And there we became. Sperm cell makes contact with an egg cell and it creates a fertilized egg. And that series of energetic moves set off an energetic chain reaction from the time that egg became fertilized. It started producing cells. It already had the game plan for who we were going to be and all that we could be. Now, there's nature nurture that determined how that ultimately worked out. But the DNA, the RNA, the coding was all in that fertilized egg. And it set off an energetic chain reaction of cell production that stays with us our entire lives. And get out your Google, go to your Chat GPT, because we have measured the fact that when we die, energy leaves our body. So the thread of how we came into existence, the thread of how we build our lives. And let's talk about that for a second. How do we build our lives? We spend our entire lives doing what? Making choices. This is called the ability to make these choices, right? This is what we call freedom, but it's not. It's agency. It's agency. It's the ability to make choices that determine your life's journey. So we make these choices. And in those choices, guess what we're doing? We're directing energy, right? I want to run a marathon. So we direct energy to eat properly so that we can have the energy to train so that we can run the marathon. I want to be a banker. I made that choice, direct energy, get a degree in economics, right? Go to graduate school, create the opportunity for me to be a banker. And so over the course of our lives, we are using our agency, our ability to make choices, which is simply directing energy to co-create the reality that we actually live. Now, it's co-creation because we don't get to decide by ourselves what actually happens. What actually happens is a combination of everyone who shows up each step of the way. And it's the combination of those choices that determine whether you got the job, whether you got into the class, whether you met the right person. Okay, that's what actually happens. So it's a co-creation process. But you see what I mean? From the time our parents chose to exert some energy to rock that house, right? All the way through our choices, our interests, how we have built our lives is all directing energy all the way to when these bodies can no longer function and they die, the energy leaves our body. So, what are we? From that experience set, and you tell me if that's different than yours, I believe that indicates the truth about that. The meaning of that is we are energy having a human experience, right? And that being human empowers us to direct that energy in order to co-create the reality we want. I decided in my 50s to write a book. That book didn't exist. I made a choice. I co-created the book. And it's been published. I couldn't publish it by myself. Even self-publishing requires Amazon or somebody, you see? But that's what I'm saying. This is how we co-create. This is how we participate in creating our reality. And it's in the deployment of our energy. Okay? So, understanding who I am led me to understand what I am. And then, now that I have the meaning of what I am, I can move to, well, what's the purpose? What's the point of this? And the purpose and the point of this is, as an energetic being, having a human experience, empowered to make choices to direct energy, to co-create the reality that I live, the only why that remains is, what reality do I want to co-create? Because we are co-creating our realities right now in every choice that we make. So purpose is how you make that choice. So let's focus in a little bit on how we should make that choice. Well, in the same way that we use the apple, and we're going to continue to use the apple, to identify what is true, which is the most simple aspect, is what it is. What does it look like? How does it feel? How does it taste? What is true about us is what we do, what we say, how we make our choices, the choices we make, right? That's the simple level. To understand what it means, though, you got to go deeper into what it is and what's the best thing it can be used for, right? And that's where you start getting to purpose. Okay? So what is the purpose of an apple? What's the purpose of a hammer? It's the best use of what it has to offer is its purpose. This is a fantastic, sweet snack. That's what this is. This is a fantastic and healthy food product that is not going to hurt our body as long as it's in its natural form, right? That's its purpose. That's its best use. Yes, I could throw it at someone. That's not its best use. Yes, I could let it rot on the ground. That's not its best use. Okay, it's a great snack. So, if we want to look at us as complicated human beings, let's see how, if we can look to our shared experiences to ascertain our best use, right? And so I have a commentary called As Above, So Below. Okay. And this is an adage of spirituality that suggests that there's a pattern to existence that is consistent from the smallest to the largest. And I actually think we can show that that's true. So let's look at us. These bodies that we have are comprised of about 30 trillion cells. Yeah, crazy. 30 trillion cells. These bodies, about. And there are 200 different types of cells, about 200 different types of cells in our body. This body functions, if it's going to function at all, because all 200 categories of cells coordinate, do what they do. They each have unique characteristics. The red blood cells carry the oxygen all over our bodies. This is how the oxygen gets to all over our bodies from our lungs when we breathe it in. The red blood cells carry it everywhere. And if the red blood cells don't do their job, we die. The white blood cells are our immune system, fight infection. That's what they do. Neural cells, the central nervous system, in our spinal cords, they're sending signals from our brain to other areas of the body, instructions to do things back and forth, right? So all these categories of cells have unique functions. And they contribute those functions for the good of the body. Because the body can't function, can't exist without all those categories of cells doing what they do. Okay, so that's how our bodies literally function. Okay, how do we use our bodies? Let me tell you, I love to have a cup of coffee in the morning. Maybe you could relate. Maybe you like to have tea. It's the same thing. It may not be the same liquid, but it's the same principle. You like something nice and warm, start your day calm. Say, I'm going to kill it today, but I'm going to start it with this nice little. Okay, that's what I love to do. Well, in order for you set up the coffee maker, you set up the tea kettle, whatever. In order for you to pick up that cup of coffee, that cup of tea, your chai, whatever, and sip it and drink it and enjoy it, it takes the coordination of your eyes with your hands to grab and grasp the cup. And if your fingers and your hands are not coordinated with your eyes, you're just going to be grasping at straws and knock it over the ground and make a mess. Right. It ain't happening like it's supposed to, because this is how your body functions. Many parts of the body working in coordination in order for us to do anything. That's how we get up and walk across the room. Now, I can tell you, we get up and walk across the room and we're not thinking about how we get up and walk across the room. But let me give you an indication of how complex that function is. In order to train a robot to do it, you got to have a doctorate degree in robotics, to do the engineering associated with all the balance functions of simply standing up from a chair, from a sitting position, and walking across the room. But this is how our bodies function. Just like with our cell structure, it takes the coordinated effort of component parts that have specialized functions working in coordination in order for us to grab the cup of coffee or tea or whatever in the morning. Okay, how do we function in this modern economy in the United States? 340 million of us. Well, you tell me again, is this not what you do? We take the most marketable skills we can muster, however we get them, and we offer those skills in exchange for money. As much money as we can get, right? And then we take the money that we earn from offering our specialized skill and we buy everything else that we need to live our lives, right? Most of which we don't produce. Okay. Once again, the reason why we have all those things to buy is because each of us are offering our specialized skill. And that provides the combination of all of us offering those specialized skills, provides all the things that we need to sustain ourselves and live the lives we live. Okay. So it's the same thing with the cells, the 200 types of cells in your body, 30 trillion working in coordination. It's the same thing with how you function, get up and walk across the room. It's the same thing with how you survive and compete in a modern economy, exchanging your unique skills for the money to buy everything else you need that you don't produce. Okay. And it goes beyond that. It's the same thing for the ecology in which we live. As I explained to you, we exhale carbon dioxide. The trees inhale carbon dioxide, use it to produce, in photosynthesis, to produce food, sugar for the critters, right? And they exhale the oxygen we need to live. So these functions are contributing interdependently. And this is what is allowing us to live. If they don't have the carbon dioxide, they're not producing the oxygen. And certainly if we don't have the oxygen, we're not producing the carbon dioxide. And so on and so forth. It's the same thing. So what is the pattern of our actual existence? Because it goes to this notion of purpose. Every contributor, whether it's internally or externally, right? Every contributor is valued not by how the contributors compete against each other, but they're valued by how they contribute the maximum contribution for the good of the whole. As long as the red blood cells are carrying oxygen, the body is going to be good. And as soon as they don't, the body has a problem. Right. Same thing with our economy. As long as we continue to contribute goods and services that actually meet the needs of everyone else, the economy will function. And the moment we stop doing that, or parts of the economy start doing that, it will break down. Oh, and by the way, it is. Same thing with the ecology. If we cut down all the trees because we want to build nice houses and we forgot that they're the ones who create the oxygen, yeah, we're going to find that oxygen is going to get tight. Just saying. Okay. So this illuminates the virtue of our highest purpose. When you look at the steep wisdom of how we actually exist, how well we exist is a function of each contributor making their best contribution for the good of the whole. And to the extent that we find out what our best contribution can be, and we provide that for the good of the whole, yeah, we're going to get paid for it. That is where we find our purpose. No different than the apple. Its best purpose is as a healthy, nutritious snack or dessert. Our best purpose is the deployment of our unique talents to make the maximum contribution that benefits all of us. And yes, in exchange for that contribution, we get the currency that we need to buy all the other things we don't produce. Okay? So this is where purpose is. Okay. Now, here is the catch. Once you know your purpose, if you don't live your purpose, and this brings me back to my crisis moment. My purpose was not to be a banker just doing deals. No. If it was, I would have been happy doing that. No. When I actually found out the truth of who I was, the truth about what I valued personally, not what society told me to value. Society told me to value independence. What I understood that I was energy having a human experience, and that human experience exists interdependently. That in order for me to exist and do anything, all these things outside my control has to do what they do and do it well. Then those things became important. And recognizing that I can't do anything unless all those things come to me, unless I receive all these things, my purpose got tied into giving something back. The only reason I am able to make a choice is because I have oxygen, because I have food, because I have water, because I have shelter, because I have sunshine, all these things. Okay, so then what are you going to do with that? Because when I was in the big house, the only thing I was thinking of doing is taking care of me. That's the problem with self-interest. My whole priority was just to take care of me and mine. Because I knew that you were doing the same and you could take care of you and yours. I didn't have to worry about you. But the fact is I don't survive without you. How can I be so indifferent to you? Because I was told a bill of goods that wasn't true. It is not true that independence is a virtue. It is not true that self-interest is a virtue. You cannot advance your self-interest at the expense of everything you need to survive. Okay? So that's what I learned. So then my purpose was tied up into how can I provide what I do best for the good of all and focus on the good of all, not just about me. Okay. And then I redirected and I went into climate risk and I went into sustainability and I wrote a book about what I discovered about what was true about me. Okay. Because here's the thing. Look at your financial success or lack of financial success, because we've all been at different stages of that. And assess where your satisfaction comes from. It sounds obvious, like it comes from making more money than making less money. But that's just your preference. I would rather have more money than less money, of course. But we're talking satisfaction. We're talking fulfillment. We're talking, yeah, this is it, man. I can do this. I'm good. No. Okay. Where does that come from? All right. And I would suggest to you that it comes from providing for other people and other things. Maybe that's a shared experience. Think about the satisfaction you get when you take care of the people you love. The joy you get from the sacrifice you make, and you see how it benefits them. Okay. Well, this helped me to understand that one of the joys of serving your purpose is that it is for the benefit of someone else. And what you get out of actually benefiting other people is the best thing this life has to offer. And it's called fulfillment. You can do that forever. It will not be subject to the law of diminishing returns. Yeah, the law of diminishing returns is all about doing stuff for you. What's your favorite meal? Oh, get me the steak and lobster. Yeah. First time you eat it, great. Eat it for dinner, great. Eat it for breakfast. Oh, well, eat it for lunch. If I eat it again, I'm never going to eat it again. Okay, that's the law of diminishing returns. But fulfillment don't work that way. When you're doing for somebody you love, you could be 6 or you could be 80, and it just fills your heart to overflowing. Okay, take note of that actual experience, because this is what I'm saying. To not build your life based on your purpose creates what I found in my life. You could find objective success, but it won't mean what it needs to mean to make your life worth it. Right? The ultimate experience is for you to fill your days doing the things that make you feel affirmed, that make you feel like, yes, this makes sense. Yes, I'm contributing. Yes, I'm making a difference. And you can see the results, right? So, we've come through this journey looking for why finding truth is essential. And what we are discovering, and I'm hoping I'm conveying, is that truth is the starting point that helps us to find the meaning of life. Truth is merely what actually happens, what people are doing. Okay? The meaning of that, the significance of that, is a function of who's doing it, how they're interacting. What, how can it be used? And this is where we find purpose. And then once you're in the purpose space, the application of the best use for the good of all, that's when you can obtain the fulfillment, the best experience this life has to offer. So what is the breadcrumb for episode 9 of Breadcrumbs? Is when we look, well, let me say it this way. I'm going to give a word that speaks to truth, and it's called reciprocity. Okay? It's an adage to say do unto others. But it's been an experience, a shared experience, that when we treat people well, they're inclined to treat us well. And when we treat people badly, they're inclined to treat us badly. And that most of us, like I said, if you're healthy, we like people treating us nicely. Okay, reciprocity. It helps us to understand life. People tend to respond in kind. So, when you're looking in the mirror to find out what's true about you, use the same analysis when you look at Hillary Clinton, when you look at RFK Jr., when you look at Donald Trump. Okay? Because guess what? When you look in your mirror, and I know when I look in my mirror, what is true about Kevin Howard is not the dumbest thing I've ever said. It's not the stupidest mistakes I've ever made. It's not the worst things anyone has accused me of. That is not the truth about who I am. There may be aspects of that that are true, but the truth of who I am is a function of all that I have done. My body of work speaks to the truth of what I have done. And that's the same thing for you, right? So when we look at our leaders, at the people we elect, at the people we hate, we need to expand the consideration in the same way that we would want people to expand it for us. Reciprocity. Okay? And that will help us to find out what is the truth. What is the truth of RFK Jr.? Well, if you look at the body of work, let me just tell you, the idea that he is an anti-vaxxer, the idea that he's anti-science, the idea that he's just a crazy person who drags a dead bear into Central Park, the idea that he was the guy where the bugs were eating out his brain, the idea that he's the guy who had a drug addiction problem, right? There is truth in all of that. But that is not the totality of what is true about RFK Jr. And if you want to understand what's true about RFK Jr., you need to look at the body of work. And let me just tip you off on one thing. In his 40-year career as an environmental attorney, he's one of the most important environmental attorneys in, I'll be 60, in my lifetime. That 100 years from now, people will be talking about the work that RFK Jr. did to get the Hudson River Valley in New York cleaned up because of the industrial companies, pollutants, made it into a toxic waste dump in the 70s and 80s. And he fought them and made them clean it up. Go check it out, right? Okay, that's an indication of his body of work. What he has done to illuminate the problems of nutrition in the United States that is producing an absolutely catastrophic crisis in our children is as laudable as it gets. But you wouldn't know that from reducing his life to these ridiculous memes that define who he is today, right? And that's all I'm saying. It's really important in the same way that we would want people to judge us based on the body of our work, because that's what is truly who we are. We are capable of learning from our mistakes. We're not just the worst things we've done, right? Okay, so use the same measuring stick when you're looking at people you disagree with. You don't like MAGA? You don't like who they voted for? Yeah, but that's another human being who's just trying to take care of themselves and their family, just like you, right? Maybe if you expand the consideration of what is true about them, the only thing true about them is not that they voted for Donald Trump. There is a rest of the story on which you can relate to that invites the question, why would a fellow human being, my neighbor, vote for that? And that's a legitimate question. But you got to ask it in a way that doesn't condemn them for doing it. You have to ask them in a way that respects the fact that you have the right to make a different choice than they did, and they have a right to make a different choice, and it's not inherently wrong. You might learn something. They might learn something from the conversation. This is necessary in order for us to find the truth about each other. What is the basis by which we're going to come together and solve the major problems if we can't get past reducing people to the things we don't agree with, reducing people to the things we don't like, as if any of us are just our worst days? Okay? So yeah, the breadcrumb is apply the truth of reciprocity, which you know has worked in your life. Apply that to how you find the truth about anything you experience in your life, whether it's a politician, whether it's a narrative that someone told you. So I'm checking the time here. We're doing pretty good. We're actually at an hour. So thank you for this conversation. This is Breadcrumbs, a podcast for people who know it's not working. I thank you for your time today, and I will see you next week in the conversation. You take care.